Hi friends, so today's video is going to be a different type of video. I am going to do a video on generalized anxiety disorder. I have struggled with anxiety for upwards of 20 years now, as I am 20 years old. And for 17 of those years, I didn't even have a word to describe what the feelings were, which was probably the most annoying part of it. So hopefully, in the age of social media, these kind of videos can help younger generations and try to erase a bit of the stigma around mental health issues. Today's video is going to get deep, so I hope you wore your swimmies. Let's jump on in. I'm sorry, that was way too serious. So, first thing I would say is if you are feeling anxiety and you start to realize that it's getting in the way of doing things that you love, or just things that you need to do as a part of life, then I would say seek out help. It's not anything to be afraid of. Well, actually, it is something to be afraid of because society has made us feel like mental health isn't as important as physical health, which I would flip those scenarios. Your mental health is who you are, and without that, you can't live your life the way that you want to. So I think maintaining your mental health and feeling okay on the inside, not just the outside, is really important. You wouldn't shame someone for going to get treatment for a broken leg, so why shame them for getting help for something that they can't even figure out is wrong? It doesn't make sense to me. So I would say, without a doubt, if you feel like your anxiety is getting in the way of doing things that you love or things that you need to get done as a part of life, that you need to ask for help, right? One thing that helped me early on with my anxiety was setting a list of changes that I wanted to incorporate in my daily routine. And these don't have to be changes like save the world and find the cure for cancer. They're small changes that can slowly start to alter the habits that your mind creates. For instance, if you find that you walk down the street actively ignoring people, and not out of, fear of being attacked, which is generally realistic, but out of fear of just making contact with someone, then it's probably a result of anxiety. And to alter that, I would say smile at every other person that you walk by on the streets. Make eye contact with the people you talk with. Hug someone that you know that maybe you're uncomfortable hugging, but you've realized that they've offered before, but you felt uncomfortable with it. Shake someone's hand, or just go out of your way to talk to someone that you normally wouldn't want to. It's not just about, doing things that you don't want to do. It's about doing things that you're afraid to do. And I think realizing the difference between what we're afraid of and what we just generally don't want to do is one of the hardest aspects of living with anxiety. Another thing I found really helpful was keeping a journal. And getting started doing this is extremely difficult because it requires you to take time out of your day to remember to write down and to even get over that initial state of feeling ridiculous for writing everything down. To me, it was a matter of getting over my self-consciousness of having my thoughts on paper. No one else needs to read your journal. No one else needs to even know that you're keeping a journal. But to get your thoughts out of your head and onto paper is a huge help to most people, I would assume. And I don't keep my journal about, dramatic things or vague ideas. I keep it more about specific things I've done throughout the day to keep my mind on track. So I will have the date, the activity I did that day, whether it be I got out of bed and showered and watched 2 of my favorite movies. If you did it that day, it's important and it deserves to be written down. A lot of times I think people can underestimate the mental state of the people they're around because we get so good at hiding things, and that can be really dangerous. So I think we need to stop underestimating the small things that sometimes it can be hard to even get done in a day. I know a lot of people with depression who struggle to even get out of bed that day. So writing down that you got out of bed, not only showered, but took the time to watch 2 movies and try to lift your own mood, that's important, and it deserves to be written down, whether someone thinks it's stupid or not. I also take the time to write down the changes I incorporated. So maybe that day, instead of laying around in bed for 2 hours watching YouTube videos, which maybe you might want to do anyway. I'm just a YouTube person recommending that you watch YouTube videos. Let that sink in. Anyway, so whether it's just that you skipped that step and made yourself breakfast, or you went to the store and talked to the cashier, if it's something different that you tried to do that day, that's important. Write it down. It's just easier to look back in your journal and see the small steps that we forget that matter in progress. I think a lot of anxiety is just underestimating yourself and letting the thoughts in your head overpower your actions. Underneath the activity of the day and the changes that I incorporated, I always include the intensity of my anxiety for that day. Normally on a scale from 1 to 10, in everyday life you're probably generally a 1, just for the fact that you struggle with anxiety in the first place and you probably have it most days. 10 being extremely bad, like worse than you can imagine. Some days are a 6, and it's because I have an event to go to, and I'm nervous about crowds and getting lost and losing the people I'm with. Anything that runs through my head that makes my heart beat faster and my stomach feel sick, that's a 6 and above. So don't underestimate your anxiety and don't overestimate your anxiety. It's important to kind of look at it objectively and think, have I felt worse than this? Have I felt better than this? And find the realistic number and write it down. And then I always include the length of the activities that I did, which helps a little bit more in getting rid of that feeling like, oh, I did nothing today, I'm so useless, I need to do something. It lets you look back and say, well, I didn't do nothing today. I watched TV and I talked to my friends and I made a phone call to order pizza and I did this, which I normally don't do, or I sat down and recorded a video, which I don't want to do. It's important to look back and have that little reminder like, yes, you did do something that day, and what you did that day was important in your life. It doesn't matter how small it was. And like I said, one of the biggest parts of dealing with anxiety is learning the difference between saying no to something because you're afraid of what could happen or the unknown of it all, and saying no to something because you just generally don't want to do it. Let's say your friends want to go out to a concert. You don't really like the artist, but you do miss your friends and you miss hanging out. But you have tons of homework and other things to get done and chores, and you just got off work and you're extremely tired. Saying no to that is perfectly reasonable and you don't have to feel guilty about that. Now, saying no because you're using those things as an excuse not to be in that environment, that's something that you need to work on. So saying no because you're afraid of the big crowds, or you're afraid you'll get overheated, or maybe you'll lose your phone, or you won't be able to get in contact with someone, your battery will die. Any of the little things that we, overestimate in our minds, anything like that, you need to work on to say yes instead of no, and to kind of force yourself into those situations to change the paths in your mind. It was explained to me once that, you think of your anxiety as kind of being the basement of a house, and your eyes and your active mind, and basically who you are, is the first floor. So you're seeing the whole world. There's no windows in the basement, but there are windows on the first floor. So you're identifying things like that is a roller coaster, and you're sending that information down to the basement, but the people in the basement don't have the windows. So all they're getting is roller coaster, and their minds go to the worst case scenario rather than the least case scenario. So they're thinking, roller coaster, this is scary, we need to panic. So they're sending all these feelings back up to the first floor. Now, in that conflict is where the anxiety comes in, because you realize that in reality, the situation isn't scary and it's not life-threatening or anything to be, falling apart over. But you're being sent all these feelings that say otherwise. So instead of assessing the situation that, like many people would, our first instinct is to panic. And that panic just reassures us that whatever we were seeing is scary and it's something to be afraid of. And the more you allow those situations to kind of define how you see things in the world, the more it's going to cause anxiety the next time you encounter them. One thing that I try to do, because I am really creative, so if you're not a creative mind, this might not work for you. It might just frustrate you because it's not working. But a lot of the time I like to play out scenarios of what I'm afraid of. So say you're nervous for the first day of school. And I like to think of it as, let's play Final Destination with what we're afraid of. So let's take the worst case scenario and run through it. See what the worst is, see what could happen, and then rationalize it. So, worst thing that could happen first day of school. You get there, you can't find your class, you're late. Maybe you drop your phone and it cracks. So you make it to class, your phone isn't working. Maybe the professor is really rude about you being late. Maybe you start to feel sick because of your anxiety and you throw up in class. You're embarrassed in front of the entire class. But what's the worst that happened? The worst that happened is you're embarrassed. And yeah, it sucks. And, it's not a good feeling. And maybe, the people in that class will treat you differently for the rest of the class. But those aren't people that you want to associate with anyway. And most of generalized anxiety disorder is based around how we feel our actions are being judged by others, not by ourselves. So think of it in terms of the quality of people you want to surround yourself with. Do you want to be involved with people who judges someone for having a bad day or being nervous about the first day of school? No, you don't want those kind of people in your life, and to give their opinion merit it's not going to help anything. And oftentimes the worst case scenario we can imagine is utterly ridiculous, which we would know if we thought through it entirely. But when that initial feeling of anxiety starts, our instinct is to shut everything down and not go any further because we're afraid. And you don't want to go any further. It's scary. So you want to stop and retreat and go back to a safe place where you don't have to worry about anything. But if we explore that worst case scenario, it can help. So you're afraid of failing the class, right? What's the worst that can happen if you fail a class? Well, I don't want to fail. That's the worst thing that can happen. I don't want to fail. Well, stop that thought at, well, I don't want to, and explore it a little bit. It's not going to hurt because it's an idea, so just play around with it a little bit. Why don't I want to fail? Well, I don't want to fail because then it proves that I'm not smart enough. Then it proves that, I didn't try hard enough, or, if I fail this class, then maybe I shouldn't be in this major, or maybe, I'm not good enough, or maybe failing this class means something huge about my life. And if you get to that point, it's a little easier to look at it and say, this is one class, and failing this class, and you probably won't even fail because you are so anxious about failing that you do everything you can to not fail. It's not the end of the world, and it's not even the end of your education, your life in education. I like to think of, events in the past that I've had severe anxiety with as just chances to prove myself in the future, which can be hard a lot of the times because a lot of those events seem to prove to me that, oh, well, I can't do what happened then because this is what happened. But you can use those events as opportunities to kind of change that path. So say you had a panic attack at school one day. The next day at school is just a chance to prove to yourself that panic attacks in school are not directly linked. So you can go to school and not have a panic attack. Or you can go to concerts and not be afraid of the crowd. You can go out with your friends and not feel self-conscious or embarrassed. You know, it's just chances to prove that you're capable and you deserve to be in the situations that you want to be in. I also think it's really important to surround yourself with people that make you feel accepted and safe. You're not going to feel any better by surrounding yourself with people that tell you it's all in your head, because it is all in your head, but that doesn't make it any less important. Just remember that people that say it's all in your head are people who are lucky enough not to feel what you're feeling. And that's great for them, but they may not ever feel exactly the situation that you're in, and that makes them ignorant, yes, but it's something to shove off and just say to yourself, what they're saying is horrible, and what they're saying is making me feel crappy, but they don't know where I'm at, and they don't have even the authority to dictate how I should feel. So telling me that it's all in my head is not going to make it go away, right? Your feelings are legitimate and real, and they can be scarier than the actual thing you're worried about feeling. And they can cut short a life that can be really great. A lot of times the people with anxiety are the most creative minds in existence, but they're so afraid of the real world and physical things that it shuts down that creativity. You know, do what you need to do to make yourself feel comfortable and give yourself that time to regenerate energy, because we don't generate energy the same way extroverted people do. You know, we need time to recuperate during social situations, and unfortunately for us, social situations are the basis of life, and it's just something we're gonna have to deal with. I don't think it's wrong to want to stay home and watch your favorite TV show, and I don't think it's wrong to want to go out and party with your friends. The thing that's wrong is to judge each other for it, because it's just how we are. It's how our minds work, and it's how our thought processes go. And it's important to take those days off when you really need them and you're really run down. It's important to admit to yourself that you need help, because we all need help, but in different areas, and yours just happens to be mental. Alright? I hope this video helped someone, and maybe I'll make like a series of this and do it like Mental Health Mondays or something. But just know that, you know, you're not the only one feeling that way, and hopefully you can learn to not judge other people the way you feel like you're being judged, because that's important too. You never know what someone's feeling on the inside, despite what you're viewing on the outside. So I hope you all have a really good week, and I love you. Alright? I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye.